This week on Work in Progress, we have the opportunity to talk to two employees from Collaborative Solutions, a full service finance and HR transformation consultancy, and one of the longest tenured consulting partners with Workday. Now, 98% of employees consider Collaborative Solutions to be a great place to work, which is no wonder that they've been able to nab so much recognition in 2020. They're number one on Fortune's best medium-sized workplaces list. And in the small and medium-sized business category, they're number three as a best workplace for women. They're number three as a best workplace for millennials, and number one as a best workplace in consulting and professional services. They've also earned a place in our most recent list as a best workplace for parents. So we are excited to be joined by Matt Thornton, who is a senior engagement manager, and Bonnie Dowler, who is the chief people officer at Collaborative Solution. And Bonnie has helped grow the employee count from 17 to over 1,100. So we thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it, Julian.
Of course. Now, these folks have a great story to tell about navigating 2020 with the extra pressure of going through an acquisition. So as a best company, we know we can learn a lot from you, and we want to get the story firsthand. So I'll turn it over to you, Ed, just to kick us off.
Thanks, Julian. So let me start with you, Matt. Knowing that you do this project management work with your clients, working on their Workday projects, before COVID hit, you and many other consultants in doing similar work were on the ground, boots on the ground at client offices, helping to make sure the technology worked well. And many organizations didn't think you could do this in a virtual, remote way, but you had a different experience. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I can. And thanks for having me again, Ed. And I've just got to talk to you about a client of ours, and they're just a rock star client called Northwest Arkansas Community College. NWAC for short. NWAC was a project, a Workday project we started implementing in September of 2019, right in the middle, March 13th, Friday the 13th was the quarantine announcement. And this entire education institution had to shift overnight, pivot to virtual, which had never happened in their history, right? So their chief information officer, Jason Dane, basically had to now not only take the project virtual, but also the entire campus virtual. So he did a phenomenal job of tooling the team with various communication platforms like Teams. We really had to shift how we communicated. We had to make our cadence of our meetings had to change. And my whole team, my project team, my architects and my consultants, now all of a sudden historically are sitting face to face working with their colleagues and their project team. Now they're doing it remotely. And so, boy, you want to talk about a challenge and a shift, but NWAC just handled it beautifully. I also have to say that our project manager for NWAC, Lindsay Robinson, was phenomenal in that she and I really agreed we wanted to create a safe workspace for the NWAC project team. We wanted to allow them to come daily to a place where, with all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt surrounding with COVID, they knew they could come to a place where it was safe, and we tried to have fun. We had theme calls. We dressed up on St. Patrick's Day. We brought our dogs to work. We had our wear your favorite t-shirt. And during one of our launch calls, we had NASA actually join us on the call to do a launch announcement. So we just wanted to make it fun, exciting, and a safe place for all the project team members to gather. And I just really give all the credit in the world to NWAC and the great job that they did.
Thanks very much for sharing that, Matt. It's a great story and not surprising for a great company like Collaborative to kind of share the credit and really deflect the credit to a client. You talked about how you were having fun with these virtual calls, the NASA experience. You also had some sad news in 2020, and I'd love to hear you share that story and how Collaborative supported you during some times that were hard.
Yeah, boy, I did. I'll tell you, 2020 has been a rough year. Actually in January of 2020, my mom, who is aging, she's in her 70s, was diagnosed with throat cancer. And as you can imagine, the shock of that in and of itself was hard. And then as March approached, then everybody had to go in quarantine, and my mom was in a high risk category. And I've been caring for them and just kind of supporting them. and going through chemo is what she went throughout quarantine. Thankfully, June, she's cancer free. But I'll tell you, it was rough. It was so rough, Ed. And just having a project and the stress of the project, the stress of the uncertainty with surrounding COVID, and then her and just not sure if she's going to be able to work through this. And I mean, it was a really scary, scary moment for me and my family. And I'll just tell you, Collaborative, Bonnie, my manager, Mark Madrid, Jim Puttoff, Mike Liardi, Susan, they all were reaching out, just constantly making me feel as though they're there for me. They're not, as a professional services organization at Collaborative, we drive our revenue on the billable hour. Our utilization is really always important because that's how we get paid. And at no point in time did any one of those wonderful leaders I just mentioned even mention the word utilization. And they just were like, Matt, we're going to care for you. We've got people that can come in and back you up. My peers also, my architects that were on the project, my other engagement managers, they were there for me. And, they just as a team, they really, they really just pulled together for me. And a time where I felt very, very susceptible and very vulnerable. And frankly, what a great team. And I just can't thank all you enough, you Collabies. I love you guys.
What a great story, Matt. And that is really the sign of a great workplace to make you feel like a person first, a human being with human needs, and let other handle the money stuff, the utilization stuff later on. So really hats off to you all for that. Julian, I think you're going to ask Bonnie some questions about the broader culture at Collaborative.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for that story. And, there's no stories like that are sort of indicative of why you're number one, Bonnie, but I know you all have been on a steady climb, at least with us at Great Place to Work, to the top of that list. So a couple questions in that, how do you use your Great Place to Work data internally as you shape your culture? Are there specific areas that you decided to focus on over the last, period of time that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, definitely. We definitely really appreciate the data that comes out of that. We take it very seriously and have a lot of follow-up meetings to figure out where we can dig in, dive a little deeper. And communication has been the key area that seems to continuously pop up. No matter how hard we try, we think, oh, great, we've doubled our communication efforts this year. No, this year we've tripled them, and that still comes up as a key need that people really want to hear what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on in front of the scenes that they might have missed, making it easy for them to digest this information. So that's been a really key takeaway from our Great Place to Work feedback.
And so during this, especially during this pandemic, how have you responded to that need for communication?
So we've done quite a few things. I think the first thing we did, which was very easy, we just stood up a whole bunch of Teams channels. We're on Microsoft Teams, and as many people are, and it, not a plug for Teams, but it definitely helped to be able to just create a working parents team, a pet lovers team, a how do you do with online schooling team? I mean, just random teams. So I think we created like 40 different teams, and a lot of people joined them. And they really serve as kind of water cooler talk, but a little bit more, specific to those different groups. That helped people really get to know one another because, we're 1,100 people spread out across the United States. We don't have a huge focus in, one area. So I think in a way, this has really helped the company grow closer. The other thing we did that we've done a lot of, we haven't done as many in the past, but we've spent the majority of this year doing them. We call them Collaby combos. And they're groups of about 30 people. And we do them, everyone's on camera. For the most part, they're targeted conversation topics. So in March with COVID, we started off with COVID related conversations, and we're going to get through this together. How can we support you? What do you need? And what do you want to talk about? And as Matt was saying, I mean, it's a safe zone. We really try and approach everything we do with a safe zone. There's nothing you can say that is going to, get you fired or put you on a list. Like, tell us what you need, tell us what you want. And then that creates actionable items for us that we can support our employees. We're definitely an employee-led company.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear, especially when it's in a time where people need information and information may be coming from lots of different directions and it might be contradictory at times. To have a place where people know they can rely on the information that they get, but also have an opportunity to sort of share their concerns and maybe even direct some of those conversations is excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And Matt, let me ask you, boots on the ground, I heard that you also had an direct experience with that, value of communication and sort of that actioning around communication. Can you talk to us about the portfolio manager feedback project that you were a part of?
Sure can. And I mean, to the credit of Bonnie and Tia Smith on her team, and Sean Campion and Mike Liardi said, hey, they took some of the feedback from the Great Place to Work initiative. And they said, look, we scored not as high as we want to in the areas of development and coaching in the portfolio manager department. And so they got, I think it's 5 or 6 of us together, and they said, hey, let's do some research here. Let's brainstorm. What do you all think? Why are we scoring lower in this area across the board? And we went out, we did some interviews. We interviewed some of the rock star developers and coachers inside of Collab. We brainstormed about some tools that we can utilize. And the outcome of that, we actually made a recommendation that perhaps some of the bonus structure for the portfolio manager team would be wrapped around development and coaching, as nebulous as that sounds. And so Tia and Sean and Mike really took that to heart and enacted that. And I'm excited because once again, it's just an example of Collab taking the feedback and the information and turning it into something and really improving. And you talked about climbing up the lists. And I got to be honest, that's why. I mean, that's why, because Bonnie and her team are maniacally focused on improvement and asking guys like me, knuckleheads like me on the ground, our opinion, and they listen. It's kind of amazing.
Julian, if I could jump into Matt's point, what a great story. And that to us, that we would call that an example of innovation by all. Matt and Bonnie, is a kind of a term we came up with when companies really invite all their people to contribute to making the place better. And for your team, Bonnie, to go out and ask Matt and other folks from throughout the organization to chip in their ideas, we see that pays off, in terms of greater revenue, in terms of people's satisfaction. So, kudos to you for practicing innovation by all, even if that's not what you called it. That sounds like a really great example.
So, Bonnie, let me ask you this though too, because not only did you have COVID and the pandemic globally that you all were dealing with, I'm sure clients and customers were in various, they were dealing with this as well. So they were in various states of implementation and sort of where they were on the path. But you all were also going through an acquisition, being acquired. We call that a challenge in a year of challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like perhaps for you and for the organization?
Absolutely. So yeah, we were acquired by Cognizant Technologies. And at that point in time, boy, who knew, what the world was bringing, and the fact that they even wanted to continue with the acquisition was actually quite amazing for us. So we were thrilled with it. Our main concern was really around our culture, because our culture is so unique to us. It is such a special thing that we've really fostered and cared for all of these years, and to now be part of a 300,000 person firm. What did that mean? And I think there's the way Cognizant is broken out. There's different groups, and the group that we're in is a cloud-based services group. So it's very akin to what we do, and their culture is very matched to us. But how do we bring that now to our employees and share that with them so that they understand nothing is changing for them, except that we have access to a greater sales pipeline and all these wonderful things that you get through an acquisition. So again, Collabies Convos came into play. We kicked off a series of those. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about the company, it's one of the reasons why I joined it, is my boss, Bob Naller, who's just incredibly transparent. You could ask him anything, and he makes people feel very comfortable. And so he led a lot of those, or we co-led them, and people really respond to him and feel comfortable asking him. So I think we did one series and they were all full, because you can only have so many people on these calls. So then we kicked off another series, and we kind of just kept having them until we were only 5 people that were willing to show up and listen to us anymore. but just sharing with them like the challenges that we're going through to, we're a Workday partner. It was incredibly important to us that we remain on the Workday platform. And to Cognizant's credit, we're a unique acquisition. I don't think they've ever had an acquisition that stayed on a different system and hasn't kind of been absorbed by Cognizant's internal systems. And they stood true to their word, and they've really worked with us. And it's been a very long road on both sides because it's difficult to try and marry everything together and get all that information together. But to be able to talk to our employees about, the challenges that we've had and the links that Cognizant has gone to meet us there has, I think, really comforted them and made them feel like, okay, things aren't changing. We really are going to continue to be this, premier Workday implementer, and this just gives us a broader landscape. So all communication.
I love that story. We've done a considerable amount of research around M&As and kind of how how those transactions are processed, and the culture stands out. Everyone who's worked so hard to build it, fights for it. And I love the fact that you all have been able to maintain it and continue to work in it. So congratulations, kudos. Can't wait to see how the story continues to unfold. Thank you.
It sounds like it was a year of communication. The Collabies convos and all the kind of work you did to make your folks and your clients feel safe and ready for these challenges of not just the COVID situation, not just the racial questions that were raised, but also this acquisition. So kudos to you at Collaborative. We want to thank both you, Bonnie and Matt, for coming. Matt, thank you again for your vulnerability and sharing the story of your mother, and for sharing, with the challenges you went through, Bonnie, with this acquisition. Hoping that our readers and our listeners, our viewers, can learn from you all. Especially that idea of constantly trying to improve with the feedback and the input from everybody. That innovation by all culture that you all clearly have. And so thank you for watching this episode of Work in Progress. Again, we're just trying to help everybody get through these tough times, keep it real, and progress really toward our mission at Great Place to Work, which is to build a better world through great places to work for all, everywhere. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.